Hi there, welcome to this episode of The Road to Service as Software. My name is Dave Vellante, and George Gilbert and I are thrilled to welcome Marc Benioff, co-founder, chairman, CEO, extraordinary philanthropist, and former assembly language programmer. Marc, good to see you. Welcome. Thanks for coming on.
It's great to be with you. Thank you so much.
You bet. I've heard you refer to Larry Ellison at various points in time as your mentor. Now, you probably won't remember this, but this is not your first time on theCUBE. Andrew, if you don't mind, 14 years ago, okay?
Oh, I
You
thought you
remember
guys
this?
had forgotten.
No way. Larry threw you out. So this is,
Yeah.
notice that you and I haven't aged a bit in 14 years.
No, we haven't. You know, that
I-
longevity formula we have is really working.
I'm holding up that flyer that you put out with your tweet about, hey, Larry kicked me off the keynote. I'm going to be over at the St. Regis. And John Furrier, we were very high tech back then.
Yeah.
He took his laptop, we were on Skype on Wi-Fi, and he turned it around. You can see the excellent production value. And you basically had to move your keynote. Thank you, Andrew, to the St. Regis, which was awesome. You were such a baller. You just said, no, I'm not doing it on Thursday morning after the big party. So that was great media.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and then Andrew, if you don't mind again, so we put out this piece. Doug really, Andrew, if you bring that up, we did this piece on Salesforce, dug deep into the architecture. You tweeted out. We were very pleased about that, and then I was like, oh crap, did I just give Salesforce a big wet kiss? I mean, it's like, but we really do believe in what you guys are doing, and we're super happy to have you on. And then, you know, we were reading this recent Wall Street Journal article, thank you, Andrew, where you said today's CEOs are the final generation of executives leading exclusively to human workforces. You said integrating AI agents into daily operations is going to become a leadership skill, separates companies that thrive from those that are left behind. And so we wanted to ask you, you've been thinking about this more than most, maybe except for Jensen. How have you honed your leadership skills to really prepare for this moment? How are you managing differently?
Well, we are moving into a new world. There's no doubt about it. We're in the digital labor revolution, just like I wrote about in that Wall Street Journal op-ed, or I've been doing on my Twitter feed, because I've gotten so excited. I don't think I've been more excited in my job since I started Salesforce. Like, it feels like a startup. It's hard, it's bigger, so it's harder, but it's exciting. And there's so many customers doing so many exciting things all over the world. It's hard to keep it all straight. And we're moving so many different things across the company. I can talk about that with you as well, but you're right. I am the last generation of CEOs who's only gonna, been the manager of humans. Everyone else is going to be managing humans and agents working together. This is going to be a critical part of running a software company. I just met with our head of engineering and services, and we look for, productivity increases this year, 50% in engineering, 50% in services, 50% in support, because we are really aggressively using agentic layers across the company. And I'm advocating all of my customers to consider this. Not all of them, of course, can be ready to go right away, but over time, everybody's going to have to get to this point to be competitive and to use technology to its absolute maximum.
You know, you were at, I think, 30% just a couple months ago, and so you're accelerating that productivity hit.
We are.
Impressive.
We see some amazing opportunities, and I think that we're going to see some great things. I mean, it's not going to stop. It's not like this is the only year we're going to get 50%. I think it's going to just keep going. So we have to really be mindful of what's happening with technology right now and where we're going to go with our companies.
So we've been thinking deeply about this and want to get your perspective on how customers and partners are going to capture value from software. In the past, enterprise software was, everybody looked at it, CFOs, another CapEx. But we're envisioning this human supervised agents working, with intelligent platforms. And you think about like cloud software, it was like CRM and HR. What sort of services should we envision that customers and partners are going to be able to subscribe to going forward?
Well, you're right. When you look at the enterprise software industry, Salesforce this year is going to do about 40.9 billion in revenue, right? So, how big is the total enterprise software industry? I don't know, is it 500 billion? You know, I don't know the exact TAM numbers. All I can tell you is that the digital labor market is probably going to be somewhere between 3 and 12 trillion. So we're not just making enterprise software to help you create, read, and update your data anymore. We're now providing digital labor. And this is already taking place with our customers. I mean, I just took a look at what's happening with OpenTable, our very first customer 6 months ago with Agentforce, primarily using it in an employee use case. And today they deployed it to consumers. And when you look at the productivity increases that we're able to get for an OpenTable, which is part of Booking, incredible CEO Glenn Fogel, you know, what they're able to do in the company is just not possible a year ago or 2 years ago. So he has to reconsider now what the productivity implications are across the board. But that's true for all of our, you know, companies and customers that and CEOs that we're dealing with all over the world. And we're all trying to get our head around exactly what is going on and where this is going. But it's a very exciting and a thrilling moment.
Hey, George, you and I talk about the App Store all the time. We talk about it with Benoit. George, did you know that Mark gifted appstore.com to Steve Jobs? Did you know that?
I did not. That's which is it's kind of what goes around comes around. Our question is, you know, now that you've wrapped, or you're going to be able to wrap the system of intelligence, system of record, system of agency, and system of engagement into these services as software, like, are you going to set up an app store, you know, that sort of brings together all the customers and partners who've built these new types of services, and will that be something that Salesforce organizes in a central place like Apple's App Store, but instead of, you know, consumer apps, these are business services?
Well, you're right. I mean, we had the first enterprise app store. It was called the AppExchange. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. It was the AppExchange. We tested it originally with the name App Store when we first came up with it. And Steve Jobs had really motivated me to build an application economy. We had had a number of conversations about it. So I built AppExchange. Then I tested App Store. It didn't work for us, but I kept it in my pocket. I thought maybe I'd use it at some later point. Then he had me come down for a press event. He announced App Store. And at the end of it, I walked out and I said, hey, I got a gift for you, appstore.com, the trademark App Store. I have it all for you. I'm just giving it to you, no charge. And he goes, oh, don't worry. This App Store thing is never going to be anything worthwhile. So he's a funny guy. And I'll tell you that we miss him so much, by the way.
Indeed.
And I'll tell you the other piece is that, you know, AppExchange has been a huge success for us. It's a great place where customers can find value. We've motivated and inspired so many other app exchanges with all kinds of enterprise software companies. And now we're building our agent exchange. And that agent exchange is really what you're talking about, this idea that we're going to be able to find all kinds of new types of capabilities that we're going to deploy through Agentforce. And you're going to see it in Slack as well. Slack has an incredible marketplace, but between the agent exchange or between the Slack marketplace, you're going to have a whole different kind of level of services and capabilities that before was not really possible.
So let's develop that a little more. Like I can see potentially where, you know, we had contact centers going out to the Philippines and India, like they can now become sort of human supervised services that are offered through some centralized mechanism. But what other business services might there be, and what pricing models would you see as part of that? And then, you know, Apple's sort of value capture from that was enormous, starting, you know, roughly 10 years ago. Like, how might Salesforce participate in that?
Well, let's take it from the very beginning, which is that there's 3 key layers of Salesforce that we are unfolding. The first is our apps, you know, our Sales Cloud and Service Cloud, Marketing Cloud, Slack, Tableau, our core commerce platform, our core application development platform. These apps have really been, in some ways, discrete. In some areas, they have been integrated, but we're really working to integrate all of these apps as one central application layer. And then on that application layer is our data cloud. And I've I know that you understand that. That's that incredible repository then of all of your data and metadata, and it fully federates to everything else in your enterprise, including things like Snowflake or Databricks or BigQuery or S3 or whatever, wherever you're currently storing your data, so that you can have that very valuable data infrastructure unified, secured, shared with the right sharing model. And then on top of that is the agentic layer. And then that agentic layer has that ability to create all kinds of services exactly as you are envisioning. Everything from kind of what we're doing today on help.salesforce.com, which is our customer service layer, to a layer where you might be providing a level of productivity. I just saw in this company Smartsheet, you probably know the cloud spreadsheet company. Well, they've built Agentforce now directly into the app itself, and because of that, you can be in there, you can say not only reset my password or how do I use this feature, but even, hey, adjust my user count, make all of these changes. So this idea that Agentforce is getting unfolded, we're starting to see exciting new use cases, lots of different kinds of customers and a lot of different kinds of industries are using it. We have those stories. This is unfolding very quickly. A year ago, Agentforce was just an idea. In October, we released the code. Now we have like dozens of stories I could tell you. I just got back myself from a trip, to Asia. I was with Singapore Airlines. Their CEO Go is amazing. He envisions this agentic layer across the entire airline. Been a customer for a long time. What are all the other kind of services that we can deploy for him? I mean, it's only the imagination is your only constraint at this point.
But most customers aren't going to be able to go from, or even technology companies, go from idea to an agentic platform in a year. You have access to the business logic, the metadata, the process logic. You did the hard work to build the data cloud. So that just doesn't happen from idea to implementation in 12 months. And so we feel like you have an advantage there, but can you like dig into that a little bit? Like, when did you start this journey, and how much was like foresight and how much was, well, it just sort of came together at the right time?
Well, better to be lucky than smart, I think, in a lot of cases. And, in this case, and I was just talking with, our head of products is a close friend of mine. And look, we've been on this data cloud vision, now for quite some time. And it's been a lot of heavy lifting because we've rewritten a lot of our core apps to be deeply embedded and integrated in this data cloud. Let me give you an example. You've heard of Tableau. It's one of the great apps actually in our industry. We bought the company, I think about 6, 7, 8 years ago. I don't know the exact time. And then, we've been rebuilding it, doing different things. And then we had the idea, oh, we're going to rebuild it on the data cloud because they never really had a strong data repository. Then when we had that, there was this fluidity between Sales Cloud and Service Cloud and all of our apps and Tableau, which was awesome. And all of a sudden, Tableau could appear within our apps. Even inside Slack itself, you could have Tableau. But then this year, we also added Agentforce to it. And now you have Agentforce Data Cloud. You have the new version of Tableau, Tableau Next. And when we showed it to the Data Fam, that's the name for the Tableau community, they're like, whoa, this is not just, making your graphic and analytics and business intelligence anymore. We're running the whole company with this kind of visualization. We're like, and side by side with your agent. And it was kind of a show-stopping moment at the conference in San Diego. And this is an example of an entire platform that just got a huge reboot. And it's like, it's like hitting that, folks who just had a heart attack with those paddles. That Tableau just became something that you never saw. It was just incredible. And large customers, and there's so many huge customers at Tableau, said there's nothing like this in the business intelligence and analytics world because no one else has done this heavy lifting. And we're doing that same formula on every single one of our apps, but it's not different apps. It's all one platform. And that's what's our unique value proposition right now for our large customers.
George, you remember last year?
Yeah.
George, you remember last year you said to me, I wasn't at Dreamforce, you were. You said, Dave, if you only watch one talk, watch the Tableau, the head of Tableau, because he kind of laid out what we've been talking about with this future. But go ahead, George.
Well, let me key in on something, Mark, that you were saying about Tableau, first moving, I think what was its sort of standalone app server now into Data Cloud, but soon the semantic layer itself into Data Cloud. And I want to tie in something that, I don't know if I say he's your nemesis, but Satya Nadella, and you have this sort of war of words going on back and forth. And there was, when he appeared, as I'm sure you saw on the Gurley Gerstner podcast, Nadella went viral for saying, SAS is going to move up into the agent layer and they're just going to talk directly to the database schema. Now, the reason I want to tie that in is, like if you take, to use a real world example, JP Morgan has attributes of customers spread out over 6,000 tables in God knows how many hundreds of applications. And if you try a non-deterministic agent reading and writing to 6,000 tables without some deterministic layer in between, I'm like, even if you go to talk to Silvio Severis, your chief scientist, and say, will I be able to do that sometime this decade? I don't think the answer is yes. And the reason I bring this up is even Power BI needs a semantic layer for read-only access to a single DBMS. So let's answer this troll, because that's essentially what it was. Like, let's set the record straight. Like, why do agents need APIs, preferably harmonized, and or metadata, not raw DBMS schemas, to be able to work with data, and why will that be the case for years to come?
Yeah, well, here, I'll give you a couple of specific use cases, but number one is this idea that Tableau now has a semantic layer. Tableau now has a data layer. Tableau now has an action layer. Tableau now has a metadata layer. And it is an embeddable application in our core apps in Slack. So that very much starts to set up the framework for the future. When you look at or talk to a big bank, for example, about this conversation that we're having, let's say I was talking to a bank CEO. Bank CEO might say, oh, hey, I know how to make these agents happen. I'm going to just take all my data and I just put it into this model, and then out comes the other side, all the agents. And I had this very same conversation with my very good friend, Dave McKay, who's the CEO of Royal Bank of Canada, RBC. And we've been having it for a year or two, and he's got an incredible AI and analytics team out of the University of Waterloo. And he's got an incredible Salesforce implementation across his whole organization and his company. So there we are, we're having the conversation, and the conversation is having over a period of time. And we start working with his wealth management division, which is in the United States, and we get them live on Agentforce. And so I say, Dave, now's the time to see the future of RBC. It's actually taking place in wealth management. And it was a moment for him because they hadn't seen it yet at headquarters. So I had a motivating moment where I said, you've got to bring these guys up and really look at this. And then he could say, oh, now I understand. In banking, one banker can't see the other banker's accounts and balances. The information is quite, in some ways, siloed, governed. There's a whole process called KYC. There's a level of regulatory embrace with the banking system that is not only in banking. And because of that, data has to be managed a certain way. That doesn't go away with agents. It doesn't go away with AI. Agents and this expression of the agentic layer has to then come out of the database in that same exact way. And I think that is very part and parcel of what we're talking about. Just dumping all your data, through some kind of maybe legal discovery API, into some big repository, and then letting all your employees jostle through that data, that is going to get you into a lot of trouble. And what you need to remain is with the level of data governance. And that is true if you're using agents or apps or any kind of query tool. And that is true for most companies, including my own.
So what you're saying, just to recap, is we're in an era where we're layering on a non-deterministic technology, but as all transitions, you don't replace the old at first, you add to it. And that old layer is deterministic software that mediates access and in fact harmonizes access, if I'm understanding what you're saying.
Well, I think that that's going to be a critical part of how this technology is going to unfold. I mean, it's true in my own company today. That is, our employees who are using Agentforce, and I have, tens of thousands of them right now, they don't have access to data now that they didn't before this. The data is still governed through the sharing model.
Okay, so now we gave you a chance to sort of push back on Nadella, that because he was so clearly trolling you. Now I want to push back on something you've said. You've said several times that Microsoft Copilot 365 is really Clippy rehashed, and Clippy wasn't their finest hour, for those who don't remember. But I just want to say that and acknowledge that all the cool kids may use Slack, but there's also like 1 billion people out there who's using Microsoft 365 or whatever the number is, how many hundreds of millions. And between 365 and Copilot and the Microsoft Graph, there's productivity and collaboration context that someday may be useful for your back end, for your business processes that you may need to integrate with. So even if in its current immature form, you might characterize it as Clippy, someday that is going to be a very robust collection of interactions that you're going to need. And I just want you to respond to that.
Well, let me directly address that because I think you're conflating a couple things incorrectly.
Okay.
So number one, look, when Microsoft repackaged OpenAI's ChatGPT, which is what they did, and then called it Copilot, and then added it into like 12 or 24 different instances of different kinds of Copilots across their company, I think they kind of did a disservice to what the potential of AI was in the enterprise. Now, one area where I think they did get some productivity was with GitHub. You saw how developers could start to use it and do some automated coding and other things and get enhanced productivity. But they've kind of gotten, I would say, zipped by Cursor and by Windsurf and other technologies where they were not able to take it forward fast enough because it's not their model, it's not their code, and it didn't really work well. And when they released it in their Office Productivity Suite, again, I don't think core customers got value. I've used the product and I don't understand the value of it just against using ChatGPT. So that's where I kind of said, oh, this feels more like Clippy 2.0. Now, that second point that Salesforce can easily, with MuleSoft, with a lot of our technology, interface with Microsoft's data repositories and different graphs and bring that intelligence into our data cloud, we already do that. And we will continue to do that. We don't firewall ourselves off, and don't confuse marketing and our ability to differentiate from our competitors, with what reality is. Reality is that information management is very complex, especially for these large customers, and they all use many different products. And there's an obligation on all of us to interoperate with all of them. But when we're launching or creating or trying to differentiate between the new and the old, it's important for us to actually do that and to be able to make aggressive statements. And I'm happy to take you aside and give you a class in how I do marketing if that's interesting to you. I've written a couple books on it, but I don't want you to conflate that with what technical reality is.
All right, but hear
you're saying. Go ahead, George.
There was a nugget in there that was really interesting, which putting the pieces together, like you can ingest Microsoft Office data with the emerging sort of graph structuring of unstructured data that's emerging in Data Cloud, that's coming in Data Cloud. What I hear is you'll build something similar to the Microsoft Graph as a way of organizing Microsoft and third-party productivity and collaboration data, essentially to create your own productivity and collaboration context, if that's recapping.
I think a better way to say it is we're happy to federate to anybody who wants to basically do bi-directional federation with us with our data cloud.
Okay.
So you see that already with Databricks, you see that with Snowflake, you see that with Google, we see that with Amazon. And we've also talked to Microsoft about with Fabric doing this kind of bi-directional federation. So anybody who wants to do federation, we're going to bring that into our data cloud, because once it's in our data cloud, it is a supercharging moment for all of our customers, because then that data gets unleashed into all of our apps. And because our architecture is so unique in that way, I'm sure you'd agree that no one else is building on a unified data cloud the way we are. And because of that, it means that we're going to be able to deliver a huge amount of value to the customers, not only in the data cloud, not only through the apps, but through the agentic layer.
Yeah, and we do see that. John Furrier was texting me before we started here. He said, Benioff's on Mad Money. And I said, what'd he say? He said, gave me a bunch of stats on cash flow. And then he said, Salesforce is horizontal. And I said, he said that? Now, of course, George and I were talking about it. He said, yeah, horizontal app. Okay. But the reason I bring that up is because you're saying you have access, because you mentioned Snowflake and Databricks and these data platforms, but so much of this data is locked inside of applications. We've talked many times, George, you and I, about could Salesforce be this software-only hyperscaler having, basically access to all this other data? But then I think about what SAP, is doing. Celonis is suing SAP. Is data portability, it's certainly what customers want. Can you imagine a day where it actually is regulation that data portability is a right? And how do you think about that? And what does that do to your team?
This is the words you're looking for. There's a lot of trap value in these enterprises.
Yep.
And this trap value is in the apps. I mean, it could be trap value. Like, I'll just give you an example. Like, we do a lot with Snowflake. We made 1.6 billion on the IPO. We helped get the company started. It's an incredible company. It's an incredible platform. And we federated fully to our data cloud. In fact, they were the motivation for us building a data cloud and federating. And it's amazing. I think there were like 1.6 trillion records or something. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it was like a huge number like that federated in the last week or month or something. So it's like an incredible amount of data is going back and forth, and the technical architecture is incredible. But when I was with my, employees for our company kickoff, and I had, 10 or 15,000 or 20,000 in the room, 75,000 online, I said, how many of you are Snowflake customers? Raise your hand, users, because, we have it in our company. I've used it. It's great. You raise your hand if you use Snowflake. And maybe 2 or 3 hands went up. And then I said, how many of you use Tableau? Everybody's hand go up. How many of you use Slack? Everybody's hand go up. How many of you use the Sales Cloud? Everybody's hands. And I'm like, don't be trapped data. And I think that is one of the things about companies that are building these data clouds. And it could be Snowflake or Databricks, but then use our data cloud to unleash the value to your customers, because the apps that we have are incredible, and we're able to really give them an amazing, and this is not some future idea. This is right now. And that is what I'm excited about. And that's excited about that Tableau demo at the keynote, which is the new Tableau Next last week in San Diego, because it's unleashing the value, because Tableau is now on Data Cloud. Tableau is now on Snowflake. It is on Databricks. It is on all of these things. And it means that you can do more with your data.
So
George, this brings us to how value is captured in the enterprise.
This is Marc, you teed it up for us just kind of perfectly, because the conversation is all about Data Cloud. And we've been struggling for a metaphor to capture and express how value is shifting in enterprise software. We talked in the beginning about agents and how customers will get value from them. But now let's talk about where value is shifting for the vendors. And this metaphor is that we're transitioning from applications based on symbolic code that sort of tracked siloed sort of historical 2D snapshots of business entities, customers, orders, things like that. That's the trap data you were talking about. Now, the idea is we want, or agents need to be able to see, analyze, decide, and act across these silos. So the metaphor we came up with, and just bear with me for a sec, like we had self-driving cars 30 years ago, but in the desert, like by themselves. And we still haven't gotten them to be pervasive with other self-driving cars, with other non-deterministic human drivers or non-deterministic pedestrians. And that perhaps could have happened so much quicker if we had a 4D digital map that they all shared that captured people's history and trajectory. In other words, the dynamics of the business. And the equivalent in enterprise software is a 4D data platform. By 4D, I mean not the historical snapshots, but something that captures the processes, in your case, the customer engagement process. And with this 4D map, then you can have not agents working in isolation, like in the desert, but you can have 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 agents that are cooperating with each other. And the reason I bring this up is this is the seat of value. You have, I think, the last we heard, 300 agent startups that are customer-centric that are worth $500 million or more. And there's like one data cloud that has a 4D map of the enterprise, of the customer part of the enterprise.
Yeah.
I mean, you do the math and figure out who's more valuable. So
let me put it like this, which is that what you're talking about is what I would call agent fluidity. This idea that the agent can kind of, I'll give you a customer example. Okay, so we run Disney's customer touch points, and so this idea that we have the customer store, store.disney.com, the salespeople doing real estate, the cruise ship sales, even the call center for Disney Plus, and the guides in the park. All the customer touch points are essentially managed by Salesforce, and the Disney database is pretty awesome. What's in there and what's possible. The product line is incredibly complex. They've done a great job at Disney of building all of these products. It's truly amazing. So now you're in the park and you're walking across the park, having a nice day in physical world, and you're with a guide also in the physical world, and you're like, hey, yeah, let's go to Galaxy Edge, and I'm going to go ride the Millennium Falcon ride. And you're on your way and you're excited, and all of a sudden it says on Slack, which he's using, oh no, it's broken, it's down. And he's like, oh, what should I do? Should I take Mark over here, to Space Mountain? Should I take Mark over here, to this new ride? And it says, oh no, you want to take him to Toontown. Now, I've used this example before, but let me just kind of go to one more level, which is that what it's doing is it's able to look at all of that different data associated with Marc Benioff that guide has access to, and start to put it together and go, Mark's looked at already taken all these rides, has bought all of these products, likes this kind of ride, has this kind of experience, and then is able to come up with that idea. The AI is able to look at all of the data simultaneously across all the customer touch points, and then make that single recommendation. And that's the data fluidity that Salesforce is offering, because that idea that the data cloud has the data, the agent then can see, or the AI model can see across the data. And that becomes very exciting. And I think that is a huge idea for the future and how these agents will interoperate. And then when they're talking to each other or interoperating with each other, et cetera, you're going to need this data fluidity to make all of this work.
And that's why I got excited when you said horizontal. Go ahead, George, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I assume in this example, either now or in the future, part of the fluidity is that before recommending to you, let's say, which backup ride, it'll know who else is what other agents are recommending what other rides and what the lines look like. That's the the map of all the other stuff.
It already looked at the lines.
Okay. That's what standalone.
It already went to that database, which is not a customer database, and it's already federated,
Okay.
and it already knows that this is what the lines look like.
Okay. That's the difference between the standalone agent and the agent fluidity.
And I think these specific examples are incredibly useful in kind of expressing what's going on to everybody, that so they can kind of understand, yeah, oh yeah, I've been to Disneyland. Oh, I understand, there's those, they have those monitors. You can see how long the rides are. All the rides lines are being monitored by this database. That's not Salesforce. That's not a customer touch point.
Okay.
But we can interface with that very easily.
But-
And that's how we get to that point. And I just saw a demo of Agentforce running for Disney, and it was able to talk to the customers, and it was doing things that I don't know how a human exactly could do, because it's able to say, oh yeah, you're coming to Disneyland, or in this case it was Disney World. You want to go to this restaurant. Oh, I know that you have a shellfish allergy. Oh, I understand that you want to stay in this kind of luxury room. You're looking for this kind of package, this kind of promotion. You want to go to these 5 rides are your priority. I know that you've already been on these 5 rides, and that you also want to kind of connect to this new part of the park. And it put it all together and closed the deal, and there was also a human involved to assist the customer. That is very exciting. And that's where agents and humans are working together. The agents have a level of fluidity. It's able to have, this kind of gravitas across the data, and it was working. It was not Fantasyland. Sorry. And it was actually great. And it was, I had to send it to my friends at Disney and go, you kind of need to look at this, because I think there's a case to be made that AI can increase your revenue, because you guys have done an awesome job building all these products, but how can your employees, they call them cast members, know how to put all this together? I mean, you don't have, there's no Superman at Disney. So, they have to, they've got Agentforce, they can do it. And it was running, and I'm like, we should deploy this. This is like ready to roll. This is incredible.
So
Dave,
you
you were
know,
gonna go. Yeah, go
you
ahead.
know there are people that are going to still want to, DIY, do it yourself. Want to understand the trade-offs in terms of, I mean, you got intelligent app providers like yourselves. You got other tools. Hyperscalers have their thing. You have vertical agents, data platforms. We've been talking about those. How much easier is it going to be for a customer to tap into Salesforce agents versus the hundreds of third-party agents I think you use this acronym SADA. When I first heard it, I thought it was a disk drive interface. See, analyze, decide, and act. How much easier is it going to be? Have you guys quantified that, your sales team, with their economic calculators?
Yeah.
What's going to be the trade-off and the difference?
Listen, there's going to be software developers who want to DIY it. That's do it yourself. Okay. And at Disney, they were doing that. They had a team. They have a great technical team, by the way, there. And they were doing that. But the accuracy that they were getting is not what we ended up getting on accuracy. We started to get accuracy in the 90% on the agents. And that's because we were able to take it across the data cloud. So yeah, you can try to tie it all together, program it all together, hire these engineers, do all this. By the way, maintaining it, if you're not using a platform, I mean, it's back to the old days of, we're going to be able to platform it for customers. We're going to make it so much easier for them to make all of this work, but we're going to deliver the level of accuracy that is much higher if they try to do it themselves. And the speed to value is going to be much, much higher using our platform. It might not be right for all customers, by the way. There may be customers who end up wanting to use, another approach. Totally great, and we'll interface to that if they want us to. But I think for customers who are really already on the Salesforce platform, want to look at that platform, understand the next generation of our platform. Yeah, I was just with a customer last week, and they're a huge customer on the platform, but there was another level for them on Data Cloud and another level for them on Agentforce. And I kind of needed to lay it out for the CEO exactly what was possible, because his team was trying to DIY some separate solution in loyalty. And when I showed it to them, and I used the example of Marriott, where we're actually deploying this incredible new loyalty solution, it's like, oh, I'm not going to only to save money in the development, but in the maintenance and on the long-term value proposition and return of investment on this project is going to be much better on our platform approach. And this is what we believe so strongly. And for those large enterprises, they may have a choice. But I'll tell you, on the small and medium enterprises that we also work with, they don't have a choice. So don't forget, there's 3 types of categories of customers that we work with. Those with 0 to 250 employees, they need a platform approach. 250 to 1,000 employees, okay, some of them have technical teams, but a lot of them mostly need a platform approach. 1,000 above, and when you get into those companies who have then very large technical teams, that's where we can end up in a DIY versus use the platform discussion. And we want to have that discussion. We want to have a bake-off. We want to show them what we showed at Disney, that we're going to be able to work together and we're going to have higher accuracy and it's going to be amazing. But you're right. There's always going to be DIY. There always has been.
But you're also, Dave, let me just follow up on that.
Yeah.
You're still, there's hundreds of agent startups just customer facing alone. And there's only a few 4D maps so far of the enterprise. You dominate the customer-centric entities and processes. There's Celonis, there's Palantir, there's a company called Blue Yonder building on relational AI. Everyone's sort of jockeying for different parts of this map. But that seems to be the super high value real estate in enterprise software, where that's the linchpin from which you integrate all the other pieces, it seems like.
I think that you left out a lot of companies I would have added on that list. So okay, I could give you 24 companies. And I think in every single one, my message to them, some of them might think that I'm their competitor or something. And I'm like, no. Let's just federate. Let's just connect. Let's federate. Let the customer decide how they want to operate. And we'll federate our data sources together. And that gives you access to Salesforce data in a smart and intelligent way, in a secure and shared way, and where our sharing model and security models are maintained. Okay,
I think the distinction I was making referred to whose maps have processes in addition to entities. Like we've tracked.
I totally understand what you mean.
Okay,
I totally get it. I just think there is a big universe of data that has to come together to achieve that. And when you talk about these 4D maps, I think there's a lot of ways that we could talk or debate about where the 4D maps really are today and what's happened, because this idea of data management evolved from that master data management idea, maybe 20 years ago to where we are today, to these data clouds. It's changed a lot, and it's gonna change going forward. But this idea that we can federate and have this kind of interoperability is proven by talk to our data cloud customers who are federating, very successfully, with these large scale databases.
And your quasi competitors are receptive to that? I mean, is that a new sort of attitude in this industry? I mean, a highly competitive industry. What's the reaction when you say?
I'm surprised there hasn't been more written and discussed about that point that you just said, which is, I think in the old days, it was all about, like you just said, oh, well, Celonis won't work with SAP and, what's going to happen? It's like the tariff situation between the governments. But it's a new day when you talk to Snowflake or Databricks or Amazon or Google or IBM or others. We're federating with all these data sources, and we're going to do we have to do these things to get value to Agentforce and our apps. And it's in our interest, and it's in our quasi competitors, if you'll talk about that, we'll call them partners, interest, to have that kind of capability. And I'm talking to our own employees more about that so they can understand the huge value that we're providing. Let me give you an example. In Snowflake, like I mentioned, it's such a great example. It's a great product. It's a great repository. A lot of customers are using it, and we federate with it. But because we federate with it, we offer that Snowflake community a massive amount of value. We can bring them into all of our apps. We can build low code, no code applications on it. Slack can run on top of it. Tableau can run on top of it. MuleSoft can run on top of it. We can integrate it with all of these things. We can do all these things that Snowflake cannot do. They're a great data repository, but they cannot do all these things. We're offering best of breed kind of capabilities across all these application types and capability areas. So, we should be, working even more closely with them. And that's where I think we can offer value to their customers, and they can offer value to our customers as well, just as they are.
Well, at 3 to 12 trillion, it's not a zero-sum game, I guess. George, we gotta go, but you wanna give
Maybe
your last shot here?
I hope
Mark?
this was worthwhile in what you guys wanted today.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we can't thank you enough for spending all this time with us. Absolutely. I mean, we've been on this. I think we were early on recognizing the hard work that you guys did, and it's just great to be able to talk to the one of the leading companies here and go deep with the CEO. So thank you.
Well, your
for your
vision
time.
of the fourth hyperscaler, I mean, that's empowering to me and inspiring. And I think that we have to still flesh all exactly what that means out, because I think that we are a metadata across these, and because we work on multiple substrates, whether it's Amazon, Google, Alibaba, our own, and others in the future, we're open to having that kind of interoperability and provide that kind of data fluidity and agent fluidity and value fluidity for all of our customers.
So maybe one last question, Mark, and we'll close it out, which is, it's the crossing the chasm question. There was this Klarna moment a year ago,
Yeah.
and it was a do-it-yourself, tech company essentially
Yeah.
that saved, projected they were saving 40 million a year, replacing the work of, or augmenting the work of 700 customer service agents, fintech in Europe. So you've got like, what is it, 150,000 customers, something like that. It's sort of like the wildebeest crossings that
Yeah.
you watch on YouTube. And
We know that wasn't true, and the CEO has still since apologized for that.
No. He
Phrased
says,
the situation, but it was a moment, where everyone's like, "Wait, what's happening?"
no, but
And
he
then I'm
didn't.
like,
He's
I don't
clarified. He didn't rip out Salesforce. They harmonized some of the other apps.
Just that point.
Yes.
Or Slack. Oh, and then he wrote a huge blog on Slack about Slack on LinkedIn on how he's. It was very weird. I mean, I think they're promoting their IPO, which is fine, and I think it's great, and they want to raise their visibility and position themselves as a thought leader in agents and technology and AI. It's all totally cool. But we are in a dynamic moment right now in the industry for sure. So I don't think that is really a good example.
No, I didn't mean it as a.
Oh, all right, go ahead.
What I
Sorry.
meant was that was like a tech company doing it. It's with a DIY, the DIY chops. But I'm saying now you've got all the pieces to put together for 150,000 mainstream customers, and I'm thinking of when is your Klarna moment going to cause the 150,000 wildebeest to cross the river, to start stampeding after them?
Well, I think that, we are at the beginning of a digital labor revolution. We're at the beginning of the data cloud revolution. We're at the beginning of the Agentforce revolution. I mean, this is going to be, all of us are seeing the videos like on Twitter and all these places of all the robots walking around. I don't know if you've seen that.
For sure.
And well, guess what? There's no robots walking around here. How about at your house? In your office?
Yeah.
Got any robots walking around?
No.
Oh, okay. So we all know they're coming. We saw the movie Terminator, and they're coming, but they're not here yet. Or the drones are flying around. Those are the scary videos. With the double propellers, and they look like these cylinders. Like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know if you read the book Ghost Fleet, but if you haven't, I'd highly recommend that. I think all of that is coming, but right now we're in this reality. The blocking and tackling, the hard work of enterprise software, of getting things running, proving the value, delivering the ROI. This is where we are. We're at the beginning, so that we can say, hey, did I tell you about Open Table? Did I tell you about Grupo Global? Did I tell you about Formula One? Or I just did a bunch of news stories on Mad Money, like you just said. And this is the exciting, fun part, where we're opening the door for everyone else who will come, who will eventually say, oh, we're better than them, we're this, we're that, we're the new guys, but we're delivering the infrastructure. And I want to get back to my point. You guys opened the door on the fourth hyperscaler. That is a big idea. And, I would like to do that, a software hyperscaler. I don't want to build all this CapEx. I don't want to build these data centers. I tried it for a while. It's no fun queuing all the hardware up. It's like a nightmare. But we could be the software hyperscaler. There's no question.
Okay.
Well, Marc, you guys are doing some great work. Again, thanks so much for your
Thank you.
time. Love to have you back and talk about many of the other things you're
Anytime.
doing.
Anytime.
And really appreciate it.
I
All
really
right.
appreciate all the great questions and everything you're doing. Thanks for all your support and so many decades of support of the industry and everything you've done for everybody for so many years. We're so grateful to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you, George. And thank you, everybody, for watching. This is Dave Vellante for George Gilbert, and we'll see you next time on theCUBE.